Cerise here. Thank you for joining me. Welcome to Story Time at Sosua Shores. I got to tell you, this is a very interesting story that was sent to me. It was sent to me from a gentleman, and he asked me to name him Ricardo. Okay, so Ricardo. This is what happened. Backdrop for Ricardo's life. So Ricardo was a very young boy. He was raised in Sosua, and he was raised with his mom and his dad. When he was very young, his dad was always an alcoholic and drug addict, and his mother was what we call these days schizophrenic. So he wasn't really raised with parents per se, but when you live in the Dominican Republic, it's like raising a child in a village, everyone will discipline the kid. When the kid's doing something wrong, people will say, hey, don't do that. That's not good, and they will tap someone else's kid on the bum and take them home. And so that's what happened with him when he was a little boy. A lot of people took care of him when he was in the streets. And because of that, he eventually grew up and got a really good job at a restaurant. So he was working at one of the popular restaurants here, and he was doing very well within, saving money, getting tips, helping his family, helping his mom. She stayed in the house a lot, and really, she wasn't really taking care of herself too much. And when she was outside, it was only so she could go get something to eat. She never cooked or anything. He would always bring home food from the restaurant, and he would encourage her to stay away from the restaurant because he didn't want to lose his job. And so she would, run out into the street, go get something to eat from someone, and go back in. Even if there was food in the fridge, she wouldn't eat it after a couple of days or a day because she would feel it was poison, So he tried his best to take care of her, really, and he did. He took very good care of her until he was 20 years old. When he was 20 years old, he met a man while he was working in the restaurant. Now, this man he would see every year. The man would come down for a month every year because Ricardo worked in that restaurant for many years, ever since he was 18 years old. So he was working in the restaurant for 2 years, and he saw the guy for a whole month 1 year, and then he saw the guy for a whole month another year. The next year, the guy said to Ricardo, I'm American, and I have access to really good education, and if you're up for it, I would sponsor you and take you to America and let you get the education that you deserve. I think you're a very nice man. Now, this man seen Ricardo's mom before, and he knew where Ricardo came from. He knew that Ricardo, came from some really extra tough beginnings, and he just wanted to help the kid. So he did. Ricardo accepted, and he sent for Ricardo, and he set everything up for Ricardo. Everything. This man is a wealthy man, and he wanted to see Ricardo succeed. Now, Ricardo was always wanting to become a famous baseball player. That's what he really wanted, because he was really, really good baseball player. So they wanted to see if he could get a sponsorship and everything, but he didn't get any sponsorship. None at all. And the old man did get him into college, and that was it. He applied for when he applied for college, because he spoke English so well. He took linguistics in university. He spoke English very well, wrote it very well as well. And so the gentleman said, I don't know what you would take in school, but you speak very good English, and you might want to learn some other languages, and then you know what? You come back to your country and you can teach your people how to speak English, and you can teach tourists how to speak Spanish. And he was like, wow. Ricardo was like, that's my dream. I don't want to leave my country forever. I want to help my people. I want to be with my mom and my dad. But I also want to have my own business where I can make my own hours, be my own boss, and have clients from all around the world, set my own prices. And this was something that really interested him. So within a year's time, he was in America and he was studying. Now, he took a 2 year course, and that was a beginner's course, apparently. So after the 2 years, he was set to come back to the Dominican Republic. And he came back. When he came back, a lot was changed because he didn't come back here and visit at all during those 2 years. It was expensive and he didn't want the distraction, but he spoke to his mom on the phone when he could, and his dad when he could as well. And it wasn't always that he could get a hold of them because he would call the neighbor's house and the neighbor would go out into the street to look for his dad. His dad would be drunk and she'd say, "Oh, your dad's..." Oh, let me turn that on airplane mode. She would say, "Oh, your dad's drunk right now. And, I know you don't want to talk to him when he's drunk." And, so Ricardo would wait and he'd wait for his dad to try to reach out to him. But his dad never did until one day when Ricardo was back in Sosua. It was very difficult for him. And one day his dad died. His dad just fell over in the street, banged his head, and never woke up. He died in the street. Ricardo was in the house trying to keep his mom in the house that night because for some reason his mom was what he refers to was a lunatic that night. He never seen her like that. And he doesn't like to call her that, but she was flipping out. And I said to him, maybe it was her intuition. Maybe she felt something, Just because someone is schizophrenic, it doesn't mean they're crazy at all. A lot of people who are schizophrenic actually are very healthy. And on top of that, they have great intuition and they're very connected to spirituality. So, it could be that she was sensing that her husband died. Now, everyone ran to Ricardo's house, banged on his door, and he was like, oh my gosh, he didn't know what to do. He was trying to keep his mom in the house. He didn't want to open the door. He yells out the window and he's like, yes, like, dime, like, tell me. And they said to him, your dad's in the street. He died. And so he had to run out into the street. His mother followed behind him. She was screaming the whole way, just screaming things that he couldn't even understand. And then 2 months later, his mom died. He does not know how she died. She died in her sleep, he says. There was no autopsy done or anything of that nature because they just assumed that, she was sick already. And they buried her. And so now he was left with no one. And he was sad. And he called the old man. The old man told him, head out of Sosua and go to Santo Domingo. Go to the city, relax for a while, see if he can get some customers there, start promoting online. And so the old man started to help him out. The old man started to pray with him and promote with him and like online and everything, give him money for a place to stay in Santo Domingo. And so after about 2 weeks to 3 weeks. He can't remember the exact date. He thinks it's like 2.5 weeks of being there. He was walking down the street and he saw a cafe. And he looked in the cafe and he saw a woman, and she was maybe about 5 years older than him. Like, she looked about 5 years older than him, is what he said to me. So he got in and he's like, hi, are you the owner here? She's like, yes. My name is, let's give her a name. Eucades. She said, my name is, because you guys know I keep the names confidential, right? So if you send me your story, I won't be giving out your name. Even if you want me to use your real name, I still won't. Because I wouldn't want you to regret it later and be like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have used my real name. Because these stories are going to stay up forever. So Eucades, we're going to call her. So Eucades said, hey, yeah, my name is Eucades. I'm the owner here. Can I get you something? And he said, well, I'm a teacher. I'm a language teacher. I teach Spanish and I teach English. And I teach, there were also other languages that he learned as well throughout the years, but on his own. And he learned German because there's a lot of Germans here. And he also learned Russian because there's a lot of Russians here. He learned those on his own between studying for school. So she said to him, "Oh my gosh, that's great. I could really use someone like you." And he's like, "Well, that's great because I could use a place like this. And what do you have in mind?" And she said, I'm looking for someone to bring in a crowd. I don't want it to be music or karaoke or anything, but something where tourists can come in and learn. And if you teach Spanish, that would be the greatest thing. He's like, "Yeah, definitely. We could collaborate. I would love that." And that's exactly what I wanted from you. I wanted a place where I could bring my clients, and I was hoping that if you gave me, some free coffee every time a client ordered a coffee, that would be great. Or a free pop every time a client ordered one. Not too much, but if you could, even maybe if a client ordered something to eat, maybe you could give me at half price or something. He was trying to explain to her that he had no money, but he did have an education, and he would really appreciate her help and her support. She was so fine with it. She was like, "Absolutely. You know what? When can you start?" He's like, "Well, I'm kind of not busy right now. I can start right now." She's like, Go sit down. Pick a seat that you like and sit down, and I'll put it on Facebook that we now have Spanish lessons here, and you just let me know your hours and your days." And he's like, "How about 7 days a week from open to close?" She laughed and she was like, "You got it, you got it." So he's like, "If you don't mind me here," she's like, "Listen, sometimes it's not so busy, and it's nice just to have a face here to talk to, or, an ear to listen, or even just a body here to make it look like it's busy." And he's like, "All right." He's like, "Well, here, I'll sit right in the front then, out on the patio, and make it look like there's someone sitting out here." She's like, "Please, would you? That would be great." And he's like, "Yeah, absolutely." So she actually had a sign made the first week, and she put it up: Spanish lessons, English lessons. And he started to get busy. He was busy right in Santo Domingo. People were walking. He was on a busy strip, and he was busy, and people were going in, and some people were just registering and paying their registration fee. He got to a point where people were initially getting lessons like every day, because some people, they only come for like 7 days, for example. They would want their whole 6 days of, or 5 days, like they arrive the first day, they're leaving the last day, so they have 5 days in between, and some of them would want a lesson for an hour every day. And it was difficult for him to it started to get difficult for him to schedule in walk-ins. So he had to ask people to start registering online. So he was making good money. He even made enough money to get stones put on his mom and his dad's grave site. They were buried on top of each other, type of thing. Like in the same kind of, like these graves here are out of the ground, where they're in the ground in Canada, where I'm from. So they're a little different here, but they're both like kind of like in the same crypt, if you will. I don't know if that's what the word is for it, but in the same area. And so, yeah, he got a headstone for them, and he was so proud. He was an only child, so for him, that was the best he could do for them. They lived such a hard life, both of his parents, and they struggled a lot. And while he was in the States, he used to send them money every now and again when he could, because the old man would give him money to send to his parents. The old man would say, "You know what, you got a really good life here, and I take very good care of you. So, any extra money you make," because he had a side job making money underneath the table and stuff like that, doing odd jobs, taking care of himself. He didn't want to take advantage of the old man. But the old man said, "Any money that you make, you might want to send that to your parents. And if you let me know how much you're sending, I'll top it up for you. So if you send 50, then I'll double it, and I'll give you 50, and you can send them 100, type of thing," right? And that's what Ricardo did for the whole entire time that he was in America. So he did take care of his parents as best that he could, and get an education for his future. So now let's fast forward. He's making money. He got the headstone, tombstone for his parents, and he's feeling good. He's like, wow, he has his own business. He's making his own dollar. So now the woman of the cafeteria, of the restaurant, like the little cafe type of thing that he was working with, she started to flirt with him a little bit on the side. And he was like really surprised because she wasn't particularly beautiful like usual Dominican women are. Like they have the fit body, they have the beautiful Barbie doll face, perfect women. But this woman was not, you know, all that. She was kind of frumpy and she was, she looked about 5 years older than him, but he found out her age. She just looked a little haggard. And he, was like, oh, okay. So when she came on to him, he admitted it to me. He wasn't attracted to her, but he hadn't had sex in a very long time. And he thought, oh, why not? So they had a couple of drinks one night. He invited her over to his place because he had his own place. Like, he was like really doing well for himself. And he wanted to make dinner for her and show her an appreciation as well. Although I will tell you this too. He did start paying her to rent the place, to rent the chair, to rent the table. He started to pay her $5 a day, which doesn't really seem like a lot, but it is a lot in the grand scheme of things, because a lot of people here in the Dominican Republic only make $10 a day American, 500 pesos. Now that might change after quarantine. We don't know what the dollar and the exchange rate is going to be like, so it might even be less. You know what I'm saying? But then let's get back to the story. Then he was giving her $5 a day to rent the table, and he had a steady clientele. So he wanted to cook for her and say thank you and cook her something different, because she was always cooking in the cafeteria. She was always the one that was doing all of the preparing of the food. So he really did appreciate the fact that he had, because of her, a place to lay his head. And because of the old man. Those were two instrumental people in his life. The old man, he knew he would never be able to pay back except with love and appreciation. The woman, he was like, she was nice, but he wasn't physically attracted to her. Anyway, they had a few drinks at his place. The food was really good. She loved it. And they ended up having sex that night. She told him a month later that she didn't get her period. That old story. So she told him she didn't get her period, and he was like, what? But we had sex like one time. And she's like, yeah. And he's like, we used a condom. She's like, the condom must have broke. And he's like, it didn't. I looked at it. I peeled it off. I squeezed through it to see it. And she's like, it must have leaked. It must have came out the other end or something. Maybe it came out the top. He's like, it's impossible. She's like, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. Now, he believed her, because what else is he supposed to think? He was like, oh, well, whatever. And that was it. So the old man he told the old man what happened. And the old man said, listen, you have to figure out if that's your child or not. You cannot just believe a woman, no matter where she lives around the world. You cannot just believe a woman after one night of having sex. You got to make sure that you get a DNA test and stuff of that nature. And so Ricardo agreed. He said, yes, okay, of course, I'll definitely do that. So the old man did visit. Now, when he visited, he visited when Cerise had a little bit of a bigger belly, well, a bigger belly. And the old man, he didn't trust Cerise. As soon as he looked at her, he just did not trust her. And he was sitting down at the table with Ricardo, and he said to Ricardo, you love that woman? Ricardo said, no, not at all. I don't love her, but I respect her. And she says she's pregnant and I want to be with her. The old man said, listen, man, listen, don't talk about being with her yet. Don't make any promises to her yet. Don't move in with her yet. You keep your own place. Wait till that baby's born. Ricardo's like, but, like what can be done? Like, she doesn't have a boyfriend. She's never around any other man. And he said, Ricardo, you don't know if she had a one-night stand the night before you. You don't know. Or even days before you. You don't know. Or even after you, a day after you. He said, just please don't get serious about this woman, and you don't have to be serious about her to raise your kid, even if it is your kid. And Ricardo agreed. Ricardo was like, well, that's true. That's true. If it is his kid, he doesn't have to be with the woman. He can still raise his child, co-parent. So Ricardo promised the old man that he would not move in with the woman and that he would not be with her at all in a relationship until the baby was born. And he kept that promise. He didn't have any more sex with her. And, he didn't ask her to move in with him. And she didn't ask Ricardo to move in with her either. Now, after the baby was born, the old man arrived again. Of course, the baby's born. He came with the gifts and he came with the DNA test. And Ricardo refused to take the test. He said, oh, I don't want to take it right now. I don't want to stir up anything. The old man said, why? What are you stirring up? And Ricardo said, his business is going so good right now that he doesn't want to ruin any kind of connections. And he's like, Ricardo, you're going to be taking care of someone else's kid? Ricardo was like, oh, you don't know if it's someone else's kid. And the old man said, no, I don't, but neither do you. Like, this is something that needs to be done. Ricardo's like, okay, just not now. Wait till the baby's a little bit older. And the old man said, you fell in love with the baby, didn't you? Ricardo said, yes, I did. And he said, you don't want to know if it's yours or not. Ricardo said, no, it's not important. I just really like the kid. It's like a sweet little baby. I don't want to, And the old man said, okay, Ricardo, I'm not surprised. That's your heart. That's your compassion. That's what I saw in you when I first met you. He said, when you're ready. So the old man finished his vacation and he didn't push Ricardo any longer until a year later, when the baby was about a year and a few months. The old man really spoke up then, because when the old man arrived at the restaurant, at the cafe, he sat down, he saw the kid, and he's like, this kid doesn't look like you at all. And Ricardo's like, well, there's a lot of people out there that are light skinned, and because Ricardo was a little bit darker, and Eucedes is a little bit darker. And the kid came out very light. But you know what? That means nothing at all, because both of my parents have black hair and I turned out a redhead. A lot of you may not know that. There's a fun fact. And the reason why my name is Cerise, French for cherry. My parents called me Cherry because I had red hair. Now, so also both of my parents are black. My father is mixed with native white and black, and my mom is mixed with native white and black, both of them from Nova Scotia, Canada. And I came out pale, redhead, freckles, and both of them are my parents. So the genetics, as a matter of fact, I came out looking exactly like my mother's father, who was snow white skin and red hair. So my father, of course, when I was born, he was like, what the heck? But everything figured itself out, right? Because I ended up looking more like my father's side of the family as I grew older, features and everything. And I know I'm my father's child now. But that's how genetics work. And there's 5 kids in my family with all different colors, but that's for another story. And I'll get to that another day. Maybe I'll tell my own life story. But so that's when Ricardo made a point. There are all types of people in the Dominican Republic who are also of mixed race. And there's not any formula where they're going to come out dark or light. Twins can be born, and one can come out dark and one could come out light. Google it. So Ricardo was saying to him, so what if his child is light skinned and blue eyes? And the old man was like, okay, fine, but you still got to get the test done. Now, even more than anything. And he's like, listen, Ricardo, I brought the test with me. If you want it, you do it on your own time, and all you do is just send it to me. And Ricardo's like, well, all right, on my own time. And then the little boy, they had a little boy, by the way, and they named him Ricardo. So the little boy was walking at this time, and he walked into the back area, and Ricardo didn't notice. And when he walked into the back area, a man brought the baby back out. An older man brought the baby back out and said, little Ricardo is coming in the back Like, you got to make sure he doesn't come in the back because we're bringing in shipments now. And Big Ricardo said, oh, okay, okay. Come here, baby. And he took the baby. And bingo. That's when the old man looked at that old man. Well, it wasn't really an old man, the Spanish man, but looked at him and said, oh my gosh. And that was it. The other man went back into the kitchen to finish getting the shipments or whatever. And the old man looked at Ricardo and said, that's the baby's father. I bet you that's the baby's father. Right like that. Ricardo said, why would you say that? And he's like, look at the eyes. Look at the face. You have an oval face. Look at the round face on that man. Look at the eyes on that. Look at the ears. This kid belongs to that man, not you. And Ricardo looked and he was like, nah, that's impossible. That's impossible. And he's like, who is that man? The old man said, who is that man? And he said, that's my father, that's my son's mother's uncle. And he's like, oh, uncle? And he's like, well, I don't know. He's like, does she call him uncle just for the heck of it? Or is it her real uncle? And he's like, well, it's her mother's brother. And the old man said, okay, her mother's brother. Well, yeah, that would be her biological father. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry. He said, I just want you to be careful, Ricardo. Please, just be careful. Don't get caught up. Ricardo's like, yeah, I think you're being a little too careful. I think you heard too many horror stories. And, and he's like, well, I hope for you that this is not a horror story and that this is your child and that you can raise your child, because I would really love to consider him my grandchild. But first take the test, please. And Ricardo promised. When Ricardo heard that the old man was going to take the child on as his grandchild, Ricardo definitely wanted to get that test done. But a part of him also knew that it wasn't his child. How could he impregnate that woman just like that? He knew he didn't make a mistake with the condom. He knew. But for some reason, he was so grateful for everything that he had that he didn't want to fight with the woman. And, he didn't know where else he was going to take his business. He wasn't too savvy when it came to changing locations and letting all his clients know that he's in another location. Because let's face it, he could have just went next door to another cafeteria and brought her competitors, her clients there to her competitor. But he wasn't evil like that, and he wasn't trying to get back at her like that. He was really grateful for growing the way he did in business. So then he ended up feeling like, there is something going on. And one day he went into the kitchen. He didn't go into the kitchen often. One day he went into the kitchen and he caught those two very, very close. Very, very close. Now, when the door opens, it squeaks. So they could have been very close and then moved apart from each other. Or they could have been just very close because they were helping each other cook something. Or it could have been just paranoia on behalf of Ricardo. But Ricardo decided after that to be very, very careful. So what did he do? He got the old man told him to get hair from that guy. The old man told him, get hair, and we'll also test that guy. So that's what he did. He got a hair sample, but the thing is, he had to get it from the root. He had to get the hair from the root. So how was he going to do that? Oh, he had no clue. So one day, he just snapped it right out of the guy's head. The guy was walking by and he's like, what's that in your hair? What's that in your hair? And the guy's like, where? And Ricardo just reached down to the root of the guy's hair and yanked out a few hairs, pulled them right out. He said, the guy went, ow, what are you doing? And Ricardo's like, oh, sorry about that. I don't know. It just seemed like something was stuck to your hair. The guy's like, let me see. Ricardo's like, no, there's nothing. There's only this hair. Ooh. And Ricardo pretended that he threw it in the garbage. But what he did was he just made a ball with it. Tiny little ball with the pieces of hair. And he put it into an envelope. And he sent that away with also the stick, the swab from the baby's mouth. When the results got back, the old man brought them himself. And the old man revealed to Ricardo, he's like, I looked at the results. I'm sorry, because I needed to know what I was dealing with before I got here. The baby's not yours, and I'm happy the baby's not yours because you're too young to be taking on a responsibility like this just because you feel indebted to a woman. And Ricardo was actually relieved because he thought to himself, one day he does want to go rent an office somewhere, but he doesn't want to have to take care of a child for the rest of his life either if that wasn't his child. So he was relieved to know that the child wasn't his and he was free, but he was also feeling a little bit let down that the child wasn't his. He was feeling a little let down, a little lost. He didn't know what to do. He didn't know how to confront the woman or anything. So he ended up just pretty much picking the baby up, taking the baby into the back of the restaurant, and to those two, and he said to her just straight up, he didn't know what decision to make, so he thought the best decision to make would be just to leave. Think about it, pray about it for a while. He knew that staying there was unhealthy for everyone involved. And so he went into the kitchen and he had the baby in his arms and he said, "Hey guys, so I'm going to leave. And here, you guys take this, take your kid. I'm sorry, but I can't deal with this fantasy any longer." And tears came to his eyes as he was handing the baby to the natural father. And the natural father just looked at him and did not deny it. Didn't deny it at all. And Ricardo just walked out the door. He did not even give them any information on where he was going, what he was doing. The woman tried to knock on his door because she knew where he lived. She tried to knock on his door, even though she was just there that one time. Even after the baby was born, Ricardo never babysat the baby at his own house. He would take care of the baby all day long in the cafeteria between clients. And, so with the mom. And so the baby was always there in the cafeteria. But they never really went to his house again or had sex again because they weren't a romantic couple. She just lied to him. But he asked, so yeah, she tried to go to his house after that. He didn't answer the door. He knew who it was. He finally secured a place where he could teach. A beautiful place, a rooftop patio with a wonderful, huge umbrella, a little bit of music playing, and they offered to pay him to be there with food and with drinks. And so he was like, great. It wasn't a discount or anything. And he didn't have to have clients. They offered him free drinks because he had a clientele, right? And they liked that. So it was a great situation for him. Well, one day, who shows up? He's sitting there. He's teaching some clients. Who shows up? The woman, the uncle, like Euclides, the baby, and the uncle. And they show up and they're sitting at a table and they only ordered appetizers and a drink. And then as they were eating, they noticed, Euclides noticed Ricardo. She got up immediately and she walked over to Ricardo and said, "I need to talk to you." Ricardo said, "No, you don't. What do we need to talk about?" She's like, "Please, I need to talk to you. Like, I need to tell you the truth. I just need to express to you what the truth is, just so you know and you don't allow this to hurt you in life." He said, You didn't hurt me. You helped me. You didn't hinder me. You helped me." And she's like, "Oh, but I feel guilty. Like, I need to be honest with you." And he was like, "You don't need to. You don't want to be honest with me to help me. You want to be honest with me to get it off your chest." And she said, "Can you let me do that at least?" And he said, "Well, okay, if it makes you feel better, but I don't need to hear the truth." And she said, "It would make me feel better." And so then, obviously he had a client and everything, so they had to like kind of go off to the side. But he said to her, "Okay, well, why don't we meet later?" And he told her that he can meet her near a certain area and they can talk for a few minutes. So they did. They met up. She didn't take the baby with her or the uncle, but she told him straight up. And afterwards, he was relieved. And he thought, you know what? She's right. That does feel better. He didn't feel used any longer. He didn't feel stupid any longer. And he realized that she was desperate, and she helped him and he helped her. So the thing is this. The timeline is like this. He was working there. She was not interested in him either. Her boyfriend was her uncle. It was her uncle. Her and her uncle fell in love when she was younger, and they had to leave the countryside. They lived in a little area out in the countryside, and they fell in love. She was 15 and her uncle was 25. And when the family found out that there was something weird going on, as soon as she turned 16, the two of them left. They left the countryside and they went to Santo Domingo. In Santo Domingo, he took very good care of her. He was a cook, and he was in certain restaurants cooking here and there. And then she was a maid. She would go out and clean. The two of them saved their money together and opened up a cafe. But they never ever admitted to anyone that they were lovers because they were embarrassed that somebody may find out that they are niece and uncle. So they never ever admitted it. Well, when she had sex with Ricardo, it was because she was already pregnant with her uncle's child, and she needed a beard, so to speak. She needed a cover up. And that's what Ricardo was. And she said, I am so sorry. I love my uncle. I know it sounds really horrible and gross and unhealthy. But sometimes it happens like that. There's brothers and sisters that fall in love in the world. There's cousins that fall in love. And she's like, it just so happens that I love my uncle and my uncle loves me. And it's the best relationship I ever had. And now look, we're older and we still love each other so deeply. And Ricardo was like, because it's taboo. If you guys were like, allowed to love each other, you probably wouldn't be as patient with each other. Like, it's just a strange thing. And she's like, I know you would think it's strange. And that's why I wanted to explain it to you myself. I trust you. But I just want you to not be hurt by this or think anything negative. He said, so it was a setup from the very beginning. And she said, yes. He was like, wow, that is interesting, And she was like, I'm so sorry, but I couldn't do anything else. And he was like, so yeah, the condom didn't break and I was right and you lied about that. And she was like, I didn't know what to do. I was so scared. And he's like, yeah, but you don't try to destroy someone else's life. She said, I wasn't trying to destroy your life. I was just trying to keep mine sane. And he was like, okay, well, and she's like, if you want anything, if you need anything in the future, you just let me know and I have it for you. I don't want to see you suffer. I don't want to see this bother you. And it wasn't bothering him. He was actually happy that the truth came out and he had his freedom now and he had a way better place to teach his clients. And, so he said to her, no, I'm at peace. I am at peace. I'm relieved. But I'm also, I'm also glad that you did tell me the truth, because it lets me know that, yeah, it wasn't me. It wasn't my imagination. And I made the right choice, ditching while I did. And she said, yes, you did make the right choice and I respect your choice. But I need you to know that you are a very good man and you did not deserve that. But that's why you were targeted, because I knew you would be a good father and I knew that you wouldn't be the type of person to let the child go. So I understand why you did what you did. And he's like, well, yeah, but like at the end of the day, what do you want from me now? She said, nothing. Just truth needed to be told. And that was it. Nowadays, he's still working at the same place, the same cafe. He's gone in now and invested in it. So they are adding another portion of the restaurant. And the portion is like a inside lounge where people can also have like an internet cafe area where he can teach a class as opposed to just one person at a time. So it's quite interesting how he has evolved and he's successful. But it could have turned around the other way if he didn't have that old man's intellect. Could you imagine? Oh my gosh, that would have been difficult. And I'm wondering how far Eusedes would have let that go. Like, would she have like interfered when he did find a wife? Oh, by the way, he has a new girlfriend, and she is a Canadian. Shouts out Canada. And she's a Canadian. She's actually the one that told him about my YouTube channel and the stories because she thought his story was a twisted one. So yeah, he's like, he's happy now, and he wanted me to tell you guys that even though there may be a dark cloud somewhere, even though you may feel like there's no light at the end of the tunnel, keep walking through the tunnel. Keep walking, keep walking. You are in one direction. Keep going in that direction. The worst that could happen is a dead end, but at least you know your way back. And that's what he wants me to tell you guys. So thank you so much, you guys, for joining me. I really appreciate all your encouragement with story time again, and I really appreciate all your support. Alrighty, guys, look out for the next story. It's about a chappie that gets chapped. I love you all. If you have a story for me, please feel free to send it to cerisefairfax@gmail.com. Now, my preferred mode of communication is WhatsApp, so it would be great if you could leave me a voice note with your story at 829-702-7726. And I accept all stories. It doesn't matter how short it is, how long it is. I love them. All you viewers, you guys know you love them too. So don't worry. It doesn't have to be a nasty, scandalous story. It could be a happy story with a happy ending, like this one, right? It's just a story that other people want to hear, especially during a time like this when everybody is in their house. All right, guys, thank you so much for subscribing, and thank you so much for watching and liking this video. Huge love and hugs to you. Big blesses.
Every single day